For 15 years, I have studied global supply chains, intelligence reports, and the covert economic warfare between superpowers. I have analyzed every industrial pattern since I entered this field, tracking how empires weaponize trade to crush their rivals. Most people think this is just another routine trade dispute or a symbolic tariff adjustment designed for political theater. The reality is far more dangerous. Right beneath this, something more dangerous is taking shape that the mainstream media is completely overlooking. This isn't just a political disagreement, it is a calculated, structural execution of a technological adversary. That is exactly what happened this week in Washington. The U.S. Senate advanced an aggressive, sweeping piece of legislation, the Multilateral Alignment of Technology Controls on Hardware Act, or the MATCH Act, effectively banning 120 advanced Chinese microchip and artificial intelligence companies. This historic move directly targets corporate national titans like Semiconductor Manufacturing International Corporation, or SMIC, Huawei, SenseTime, and Cambricon. If you looked at your screen and saw the images of Donald Trump, Xi Jinping, and those red banned stamps over China's leading tech champions, I want to confirm that you are exactly where you need to be. The consequences will be felt for the next decade. What was decided in those closed-door hours in May 2026 will permanently reshape global computing infrastructure, trigger a desperate national security retaliation from Beijing, and fundamentally break the international technology stack. Tonight, I want to walk you through 3 questions the mainstream coverage refuses to answer honestly. First, how will these absolute bans on 120 entities systematically destroy Xi Jinping's AI superpower roadmap? Second, what is the hidden connection between this technology blockade, the U.S. national debt crisis, and the upcoming bilateral summits? Third, how will this massive economic tremor hit your wallet, your personal savings, and the global markets? If this is the analysis you want, subscribe now and stay with me, because the answers will challenge everything you think you know about the US-China trade war. Stay with me. How will these absolute bans on 120 entities systematically destroy Xi Jinping's AI superpower roadmap? Here is what actually happened. The U.S. Senate, alongside key sponsors like Senator Pete Ricketts and Representative Bill Huizenga, introduced a legislative hammer designed to close every lingering loophole in Western export controls. From a professional standpoint, this is the most aggressive pivot in technological containment we have seen in modern history. Previously, the Bureau of Industry and Security, or BIS, targeted specific individual manufacturing fabrication facilities, known as fabs. If a company like Huawei or SMIC wanted to bypass restrictions, they simply ordered advanced equipment for an older, unrestricted facility and later redeployed that hardware to build cutting-edge 7nm or 5nm military-grade processors. The MATCH Act completely destroys this evasion strategy. The mechanism here is brilliant and brutal. It shifts the entire legal framework from facility-specific restrictions to an enterprise-wide corporate ban. If a company, its subsidiary, or any of its 120 affiliated entities is blacklisted, they are entirely cut off from accessing American software, electronic design automation tools, and advanced lithography equipment. Furthermore, this law introduces an unyielding international ultimatum. It leverages the Foreign Direct Product Rule, giving critical U.S. allies, specifically the Netherlands, Japan, Germany, South Korea, and Taiwan, exactly 150 days to mirror these exact structural restrictions. If ASML in the Netherlands or Tokyo Electron in Japan fail to comply within this 150-day window, Washington will trigger unilateral sanctions against them, blocking them from the U.S. financial system. I want to be direct about this. The United States is building a digital iron curtain around Beijing's computing brain, choking off the algorithmic blood supply before it can ever reach the beating heart of their military apparatus. Without access to Dutch extreme ultraviolet lithography systems or American design software, China's domestic capacity to scale artificial intelligence platforms for hypersonic missile guidance, autonomous drone swarms, and advanced cyber warfare is effectively frozen in place. Let me give you a specific data point to illustrate the scale of this crackdown. Under this new bill, civil penalties for a single violation start at a staggering $1.5 million. The law mandates a strict, phased implementation schedule, with all connected vehicle and advanced AI software prohibitions locking down by January 1st, 2027. Followed by a total hardware and semiconductor manufacturing equipment embargo by January 1st, 2030. But that is not the most consequential dimension. What matters far more is what comes next. What is the hidden connection between this technology blockade, the US national debt crisis, and the upcoming bilateral summits? And here is where the analysis gets uncomfortable. Most analysts are missing this insight entirely. They are viewing this tech ban in total isolation, separate from the broader macroeconomic collapse staring the Western world in the face. If you look at the classic framework popularized by legendary hedge fund founder Ray Dalio, empires invariably follow a predictable life cycle. When a dominant superpower enters a period of late-stage empire decline, characterized by a staggering $34 trillion national debt load, structural inflation, and domestic political polarization, it can no longer maintain global hegemony through financial dominance alone. The Federal Reserve and the US Treasury are caught in a vicious trap, forced to keep interest rates higher for longer just to attract buyers for American debt, all while interest payments consume more than $1 trillion of the federal budget annually. Because Washington's financial leverage is facing unprecedented long-term strain, the Pentagon and Congress are weaponizing their remaining asymmetric advantage: absolute control over foundational technology choke points. I have seen this pattern before. When an incumbent power feels its economic foundation shaking, it accelerates its strategic containment of the rising challenger. The upcoming US-China bilateral summits are not designed to establish peace. They are high-stakes asset protection maneuvers. The United States is entering these negotiations with a loaded tech weapon, using the threat of a total semiconductor embargo on 120 companies to force Beijing to hold on to its massive reserves of US Treasury bonds. Washington is terrified that if Xi Jinping decides to dump hundreds of billions of dollars in American debt, it will send US yields soaring and collapse the domestic bond market. And here's the part nobody is saying out loud: China is not taking this lying down. This technological siege is forcing Beijing into a tight defensive alliance with Moscow. As the Western alliance attempts to isolate Russia and contain China, these two Eurasian powers are rapidly building a completely alternative, non-Western economic ecosystem. China is already rerouting its advanced computing talents to assist Russia's defense sector, while Moscow guarantees a steady flow of heavily discounted oil and natural gas to fuel China's domestic semiconductor foundries. And this is where it stops being abstract and starts being about your money, your country, and your future specifically. Let me tell you what this means for you specifically. Do not make the mistake of assuming a legislative bill passed in Washington targeting foreign companies won't alter your daily financial reality. But this is where it turns truly serious. First, consider your personal savings and your 401k portfolios. The Global Technology Index is hyper-dependent on semiconductor infrastructure. Companies like NVIDIA, Apple, and advanced micro devices rely heavily on global supply chains that run directly through the Taiwan Strait and utilize components processed in both the US and Asia. When the Senate blacklists 120 major tech entities, it forces an immediate, chaotic decoupling of the global corporate tech stack. This will create massive market volatility, disrupting tech sector earnings and dragging down major retirement funds as multinational corporations spend hundreds of billions of dollars attempting to relocate their manufacturing facilities out of the conflict zones. Second, let me give you a specific data point regarding the prices of everyday electronics. Industry analysts estimate that completely rewriting these semiconductor supply chains will cause a 20 to 30% structural increase in the cost of producing microchips. This means the next smartphone, laptop, or connected vehicle you purchase will carry a significantly higher price tag, further eroding your household purchasing power. On a macroeconomic scale, the global fallout will be severe. China currently controls over 70% of the world's extraction capacity, and a massive 90% of the refining capacity for rare earth minerals, including critical elements like neodymium, gallium, and germanium. These specific materials are absolutely essential for manufacturing everything from electric vehicle motors to advanced radar systems used by the Pentagon. If Beijing decides to execute a total export ban on these minerals in retaliation for the Match Act, global industrial manufacturing will grind to a halt. We are looking at a potential supply chain shock that could instantly spike global energy transition costs and disrupt advanced manufacturing across Europe and North America. The pieces are shifting significantly, and the inflationary pressure this creates will ensure that the Federal Reserve cannot lower interest rates anytime soon, keeping your mortgage rates and credit card debt painfully expensive for years to come. So here is where this goes, and I am going to be direct. I have argued for years that the geopolitical landscape is heading toward an inevitable bifurcation. Over the next 30 to 60 days, as the initial provisions of this Senate bill take effect, we will witness a dramatic escalation in economic warfare. There are two distinct paths ahead of us. Path A is the escalation scenario. Beijing responds to the blacklisting of its 120 tech firms by imposing a strict, unyielding embargo on all rare earth mineral exports to the West, while simultaneously accelerating its gray zone naval blockades around Taiwan. This would immediately trigger an acute global manufacturing crisis and push tech stocks into a severe bear market. Path B is the tactical resolution scenario. Realizing the immense structural damage of a total tech cutoff, Xi Jinping uses the upcoming bilateral summits to negotiate a temporary, conditional truce, offering to stabilize U.S. Treasury purchases and curb dual-use technology transfers to Russia in exchange for specific licenses and waivers under the Match Act framework. From a professional standpoint, my analytical opinion is clear. Pattern-based analysis shows that neither empire can afford to back down now. Washington is locked into protecting its technological hegemony, and Beijing is entirely committed to achieving total technological self-reliance by 2030. We are moving into an era of a fragmented global economy, where the single internet we enjoy today will be split into two competing, incompatible spheres of influence. This leaves us with one critical, unresolved question that every viewer must confront tonight. As the United States aggressively draws this digital Iron Curtain, is Western society truly prepared to accept the massive inflationary costs, the supply chain disruptions, and the systemic stock market volatility required to win this tech war? The era of cheap, globalized technology is officially dead, and the price of containment is about to hit your bank account. Stay vigilant.